Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting of the District of Sechelt for Wednesday, October 16th. It is 7 p.m. and we have an agenda in front of us. I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And we have two delegations this evening. So our first delegation is Mr. Richard Austin on behalf of the Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association. Please come forward.
Check. Works.
It works.
I have brought with me this evening John Jeffrey and Colin Stracker. They're on the executive for the SCDRA, and we're doing a bit of cross-training.
Okay.
So it sort of helps them know what's going on as we prepare for each year.
Perfect.
Just want to review our 2019 events briefly. We had a test and tune in May, and then the following day we had a public drag race. So for that public drag race, we had 612 attendees. 450 were paid spectators, 112 were youth, and there were 50 volunteers. And I think we had about 60 cars. And then we had another test and tune in June, another one in July, and then we had our scheduled August race on the Sleepy Hollow weekend that was rained out. So fortunately we had the backup date of September, and that one went very well. We had 647 attending, 444 paid spectators, 167 youth, 36 volunteers, and there were about 64 cars for that one. So moving into 2020, we're going to continue working with our partners, and our partners in the community are the School District 46, the sponsors, teacher sponsors at Elfie, Chat, and at Pender Harbor with the young students drag racing. We'll also continue working with the Lions Club and the paddlers who support local community groups. What we're proposing for 2020, we're changing it up a little bit this year, or for 2020. So we're proposing a test and tune on Saturday, May 23rd, and a drag racing for the public on Sunday, May 24th. So that's what we've been doing for the last many years. The change up will be on Saturday, July the 4th. We're proposing to have a test and tune. And then on the Sunday, July the 5th, this will be a public drag race. Then on Sunday, August the 9th, in conjunction with the Sleepy Hollow weekend, we will have the drag racing for members in the public as we've normally done for the last many years. Saturday, September 5th, this will be a backup date only if the event that of May 24th, July 5th, or August 9th were rained out. So if none of those dates were rained out, we would not have an event on September the 5th. So we're proposing to go to 3 public events next year. And the theory behind this is we want to try it out, see if we can get more drag races out to the track for 3 public events. We don't know how it's going to work out until we actually execute it. We suspect the spectator count could just remain the same over the whole year, but we're just going to try it out and see what happens. So that's pretty much it with our proposal for 2020. I'm willing to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you for presenting this. And we discussed this before the meeting here at the airport. Maybe you could speak to the hours, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, one of the challenges that the operators are having within the drag race days is the 12-hour window and just meeting the duty day requirements. So the request through the committee was to just bring it back 1 hour to 6 o'clock before, I guess it was done by 5, but just to bring it back to 1800 for those race days.
Yeah, that would be fine. Actually, based on the way things went this year, we did have some challenges in 2018. This year, the volunteers did a great job with the tower and the electronics, and it did work out well. At each of the events this year, we were done by 1,800 hours. So that would work just fine. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Committee? No? Okay. Did we want to move this forward right away? Okay. Yes, Councillor Lamb.
Just a question is, so it looks like you've got 2 weekends where you're looking at racing Saturday, and I shouldn't say racing, but you're going to use the airport for 2 full days, Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, so on the Saturdays, Tom, they would run, or the Saturday would run from 1,300 hours to 1,800 hours, and then the Sunday would be 700 to 1,800 hours. And then on the July weekend, same scenario, 1,300 to 1,800 hours on the Saturday, and then the Sunday would be 700 to 1,800 hours. So actually, the other thing with this respect to this is the test and tunes. We've been finding our numbers have not worked quite where we'd like them to be. So with having another public race, we figure we can get more people to participate in the test and tunes as well. And we are also reducing our dates for 2020 over 2019 by 1. We end up with 5 events as opposed to we had 6 events for this year.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a recommendation? Councillor Toth.
I will move that we accept this with the change from 1,900 to 1,800.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any other comments, questions? All right, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And our next delegation is Bet Cecile. Cecil, thank you. Sorry, and before you get started, we did get handed and emailed the other document. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I've given you a copy of,
Yes.
of what I'm going to say. And actually, the first thing I want you to do is to close your eyes and think of your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren if you have them. That's the hearts part of this, of hearts and minds. Anyway, but that's the context, seriously. Honorable Mayor and Council, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you on behalf of Alliance for Democracy. Climate change has been part of my thinking and work for a very long time. The latest report from the IPCC, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, is truly horrifying and has prompted me to up my game. In short, we have a very short period of time in which to make the changes we need to before facing irreversible, catastrophic climate chaos. Yes, it will take sustained effort and probably some sacrifices to turn this around. And if we succeed in this, our children will thank us. And if we don't succeed, they will face an increasingly devastated and dangerous world. I certainly realize that the District of Sechelt is not going to solve this by itself, and considerably more leadership on the part of the provincial and federal governments is necessary. However, there are numerous things that the District of Sechelt can do that will help, and your efforts will be supported by the many of us who have become aware of this growing emergency. I am here to make some suggestions that staff can prioritize and flesh out with appropriate details and implementation strategies. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a building inspector, but this is overview stuff. The practical suggestions fall into a couple of categories. Things that the District of Sechelt can do and has control over, i.e. its committees, district properties, and building codes and bylaws. And I'm actually not sure the extent that you have control over the building code, but I know that you have influence somewhere along the line. Okay. I suggest first that the town establish a climate change committee and invite knowledgeable and interested people to sit on it. This will both make the process more transparent and increase citizen involvement and buy-in. Suggestions re town properties. Solar panels on all the roofs of town properties where there is the appropriate southern exposure. And as many of you know, the school districts have done this with quite a deal of success in terms of even lowering their costs as well. Evacuated tube solar water heating on all appropriate town properties, which is a pretty low-tech way of doing stuff and works really well. All pumps in the town, and I'm thinking of, the water treatment plant should be run by solar. Methane emissions from the from sewage treatment are a concern, and I'm not up to date on the latest details in terms of your latest treatment plant. But if you are leaking methane, it is way more damaging in the short term than carbon dioxide. In the longer term, that's not true, but in the short term, which is what we're really looking at right now, get it down. We need to get it down. And I have no idea whether this would work here or not, but the city of Portland has installed turbines in the town pipes to generate electricity. So that would be something else that could be looked at. In terms of building codes and bylaws, all new construction to be electric vehicle ready. I mean, if we really want people to run electric vehicles, they have to have a place to plug them in. All new construction should be solar panel ready, and I'd love to say should be required, but that might be a stretch. And all new construction would have to be situated in such a way that you can actually put solar panels on the roof. And therefore, the cladding on the roof material would have to be adequate for that as well. Evacuated tube solar hot water required. Roofing materials suitable for rainwater harvesting. And the installation of cisterns would be cost effective if mandated in new construction. Air-to-air heat pumps. Gray water use in toilets. Why are we flushing our toilets with drinking water? Hello. And investigate the low-impact, non-traditional building techniques, i.e. cob, straw bale, etc. And I know they fall outside of our conventional building codes, but when it is possible to do, they can be a really sustainable way of building. Other bylaws ban single-use plastic. And I know that Victoria has run into trouble, but I do know that there's a way of crafting it that I believe, because Gibson's did this, that I think it says something about it being about waste stream as opposed to climate change or other things like that. Other options, signing on to the campaign to hold fossil fuel companies responsible, and I realize that has some controversy associated with it, but if you can, it would be useful. And lobbying federal and provincial governments. I realize I've given you a shopping list. Much more could be added. And I also realize that not everything will happen at once. But I do want to say that it's imperative to quickly create a plan to become net zero in the very near future. Thank you much for your time and attention. And if you have questions, I would be delighted to hear them.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Toth.
Actually, a comment more than anything. Installing turbines in town pipes.
Yeah.
The District of West Vancouver actually has that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's really advantageous when your reservoir is very high. You've got that huge elevational drop.
That would make sense.
When I was in BCIT for my fourth year electrical, I actually worked on sort of prototypes around that exact project and generating electricity from it. Not so practical here because we don't have as much of an elevational change either as West Vancouver does. But it's still interesting to see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor McLean.
Matt.
Okay. Thanks so much for coming in. I think we need people like you out there pushing us forward.
Doing my best.
Like you said, there's a lot that we can do as a municipality. One thing that you left off your list is designing communities where we can walk more, where we can use transit more, and
Yes.
reduce that use of single occupancy vehicles.
Yes.
Climate change is a huge threat to our community, and we need to be doing more. So thank you for coming, but we need to follow up with action. I just don't want to just continue talking about this. And I think at least I won't speak for everyone at this table, but what I would like to see is more people pushing for climate action, and more people reminding us that we can take action here at the municipality to create a more sustainable world and reduce our carbon emissions, reduce our methane emissions, and provide that place for our grandchildren.
So a flood of letters would be helpful, I assume?
Yes, but we need more specifics. What I want to see is a collaborative relationship where we can work together,
Okay.
and we can change stuff that we have control over, that we can change.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm personally willing to help you guys out in making sure that your advocacy is most effective. So I'd be willing to meet with you and talk about where's the right places to push that. Because I need the push to make the change. It's how this whole government thing works. It's we need to hear from people in order to create change. So I'll help you push in the right directions, but I do need that momentum in order to create the change.
Thank you, Matt. You will hear from me, among many others, I hope.
Okay, any other? Councillor Rowe.
Thanks for coming in, Bet. We've just put together and I've just started working on the committees that we have formed as council. So I think as far as forming a new committee at this point, we would need to give some further thought to capacity and how we're doing. That's not to say that a lot of this couldn't be looked through with, for instance, the housing committee through that lens of climate change. But is Alliance for Democracy, would you be considered a committee that is advocating for this, for climate change issues? Or is there another committee out there that we could maybe provide a liaison to, as opposed to forming our own committee? Or I'm sort of trying to think outside the box, given the capacity of us and of staff, but while still being able to address some of the things that have been brought forward. Okay. So.
Alliance for Democracy is literally an alliance, so there's a number of, we have a number of, whoever is sitting on the steering committee has a particular focus, and that's, so we, if more people with a different focus join us, then we have something different. I have started the formation of a working group called Coast Climate Change, which is a working group of Alliance for Democracy. We're just in the beginning stages, but that's a potential place that, yeah. There's a lot going on the coast. Well, you probably know that, but there's all of a sudden there's a lot going on with climate change, and so we're trying to pull all the pieces together. And Extinction Rebellion, as you probably know, has been very visible and doing a particular kind of grassroots work. But some of us want to work at this particular level to look at some of those practical ways of going forward. So yeah.
So what we could potentially do is refer this to staff at this point and request that Bet come back, or at least connect with us once that committee is kind of solidified a little more.
Yeah. And I'll
then we can look
stay
at-
in touch with Matt as well.
Okay, perfect.
And this is new to me to try and figure out how to influence things at this particular level. So
Yes.
I'm still learning about how this part of things goes together.
Perfect. Yes, yeah, I mean, yeah, so are we. Yes, earlier this year, like just shortly into our mandate, we actually had a workshop on climate change and local government. And there are workshops and things that we are attending. UBCM had some more things. So we're picking up pieces as well. And as we're learning how to work inside this environment, we're looking at how does it apply as well, and what do we have jurisdiction over and what don't we?
Yeah.
Right, so it's those kinds of
Yeah,
things as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Okay. So we need a motion to refer this to staff. So first, accept this letter and refer it to staff. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
So we have a proclamation. This is Foster Family Month, October 2019. Whereas thousands of British Columbian foster parents and families provide alternate family care for children temporarily unable to live with their families, and whereas foster families are an integral and valued part of a team that helps children return to their families, live with extended family, or make the transition to an adoptive family, and whereas Indigenous foster families support Indigenous children to learn about and practice their Indigenous traditions, customs, and language, and belong to their Indigenous community, and whereas foster families from diverse cultural backgrounds support all children and youth to maintain their cultural heritage, learn about and practice their cultural traditions, customs, and language, and belong to their community, and whereas fostering is a community responsibility and provides opportunities for all community members to contribute to the support of children and youth. Now, therefore, I, Darnelda Seegers, on behalf of the District of Sechelt Council, do hereby proclaim that October 2019 shall be known as Foster Family Month in the District of Sechelt. All right, move on to minutes of the regular council meeting of Wednesday, October 2nd. Motion to receive and adopt. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Thank you. I'll move on to the next one as soon as I can get to it. This is item 7.1. This is Committee of the Whole minutes of Wednesday, October 9th. I'd like to pull for separate consideration recommendations number 3 and 4. So we'll look at the rest of them. Someone like to move adoption? Moved. Maybe second? Okay. Any errors or omissions in there? All those in favor? Thank you. So recommendations 3 and 4. These are the awards that we made to the Legacy Fund, awards. Sunshine Coast Arts Council, $100,000 for the replacement of the Art Center roof. Pender Harbor Health Center, $40,000 for a wheelchair accessible van. And I've actually gotten an email on this one already today. They're thrilled that there's such a need for this up in Pender Harbor. Roberts Creek Community Association be awarded $100,000 for replacement of the Roberts Creek Community Hall roof. Again, a facility that gets wide use up and down the coast. Rotary Club of Sunshine Coast, $35,000 for installation of automated external defibrillators. And the CIA Reconciliation Movement, $10,000 for the rest of the cost of carving of the totem pole. So I'd like a motion to adopt. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Oh, comment? Comment first. Go ahead. Sorry.
There was some discussion regarding recommendation 3 as to whether the Arts Council owned the building or not. And I just wanted to clarify that the District of Sechelt owns the land, the Arts Council owns the building, and the property is under lease to them from the district.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. So, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Now we get to move on to bylaws. So before we move into, let's receive both reports first, for the first bylaw and the second bylaw. And then because there's a comment I want to make about both. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so this is a question for Mr. Douglas. What I noticed in the two bylaws, so if you look at the first one, this is the Community Amenity Reserve Bylaw, 3A says funding from community amenity contributions. And then if we go into the second bylaw, Affordable Housing Reserve Bylaw, number 3 also says funding from community amenity contributions. So I was wondering if you could address that.
Sure. We have a policy probably coming to the next committee of the whole or council meeting, and it talks about community amenity contributions as kind of like the umbrella topic, and underneath that we have the 2 funds, which is the community amenity fund and the affordable housing fund. So I'm comfortable with leaving it the way it is, to have it, as an umbrella topic or heading, and that when we get the funds, they'll be earmarked for either this fund or that fund, or split.
And there'll be policy or something coming forward to help us determine that?
Yes, like I said, I think it's the next committee of the whole, there is a policy that has been developed that describes how the contribution would work, and kind of a starting negotiation point for both the affordable housing and community amenity.
Okay, thank you. All right, now get back to the one. So we'll have you address the Community Amenity Reserve Fund bylaw number 587 first. That's on it's item 8.1A on page 26. Mr. Curry?
Okay. So we're doing 586 first, right?
Sorry, I believe at 587 is in our,
Sorry.
587, page
You're up.
26.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. My report today recommends the creation of the Community Amenity Contribution Reserve with the establishment of bylaw 587. In quick summary, the establishment of the reserve will create and govern how the funds could be spent that are contributed to the amenity reserve, and the policy will govern how the funds are collected, and the policy is coming at, I believe, at the next regular council meeting. The draft has been completed, so you'll see and get to review how we'll be collecting the contributions to the reserve, and this essentially will govern how the funds are spent. So we built the, if you turn to page 32 in the bylaw, which provides the suggested amenities for how the contributions could be spent. And we built this list based on the OCP has a couple of different of these items in it already identified, and also through the Parks Open Space Plan. And we also tied it in with the Council's strategic plan and a couple others we've added just for best practice through research and looking at other bylaws that are out there. And that essentially summarizes the establishment of having this fund for the purpose of essentially governing how the funds could be spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McLean.
Yeah, thank you for that. Could you describe how community amenity funds are currently managed?
There isn't a current system, so we're not collecting community amenities. There isn't anything.
Any other questions? Councilor Lamb.
I think, yeah. So are we looking at how are we looking at collecting these funds? Is this just a developer as they're moving forward to collect the funds?
Essentially, yes, and you're going to get a chance at seeing how the fees could be calculated or attributed to the fund with the policy. So the policy will govern how they're collected. You could also receive a donation to the district that could be attributed to the fund as well. But the policy will guide how the funds and what the associated fees are for development.
If you look at page 32, where the actual bylaw is, it indicates that funding can come from the community amenity contributions, right, from, would be developers or somebody doing some development or upgrading in the community. Also from current revenues, so we could put money in there from our current tax base. General revenue fund surplus or other monies as directed by council. So it pretty much leaves it open that it can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be just that. But it actually then identifies in number 4 a very extensive list of things that the funds can be used for. And I like the list. It's got lots of things in there that we are looking for in the community. Councillor Lamb, other questions?
Okay, as we're moving forward, or is this going to be a bit open on how we collect these funds if we go after, if we set I guess a monetary value or something with developers? Is that going to be something that can be negotiated, may I say?
You'll have a chance at reviewing how they're collected with the policy. This is just establishing that there's a statutory reserve so the funds can go somewhere. This has it's establishment of the reserve to make it a statutory reserve so that the use of the funds could only be within this bylaw. So the policy will say how they're collected from developers. You'll have a chance to review that very soon.
So what you're saying is we're building the bucket and we're going to get the rules as to what goes in the bucket at a future meeting. Because right now we don't have a bucket.
Essentially, yes.
Councillor McLean.
So to continue with that analogy, we have a very large bucket, one that could be infinitely large with a couple of these provisions, particularly other amenities agreed to by council. As I read that essentially says if council agrees to something, we can put it in here. I'd like a little more clarity within this bylaw. We already have quite an extensive list. So to put an other on top of that list, I don't know if that's fully necessary. I recognize it creates some flexibility, but what I'm looking for is clarity so everyone knows what to expect out of community amenities.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Lamb?
Just a comment, I believe that I'd like to see this move forward. We do need to, get some money set aside so we can, have some money to move projects forward as we're needed, and we need to have an area where that comes from. So it's good.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Kuster.
Just for clarity, right now in our OCP, there is something about community amenity contributions, but we were saying we've never collected them before, or we've just never had a bylaw where to put them in.
I'm just going to refer this to Andrew here.
Yes, thank you. Excellent question. The official community plan does speak to contributions for affordable housing, does speak to contributions for amenities and such. Sometimes amenities come in the form of land, extra park dedication. Sometimes they come in the form of on-site amenities. But in the particular case of having a dedicated statutory reserve fund and asking for money in lieu of amenities or in lieu of an increase in density, we do not have that established yet, and the OCP is supportive of such. And our research indicates that this is very much common practice throughout municipalities in British Columbia, and that will be look forward to presenting that to you folks next week with a little more detail. Thank you.
Any other questions? What about this side of the table? No? Councillor McLean.
this feels like we're passing half a bylaw. This made sense when we did it with the Affordable Housing Reserve. It was much simpler. But I'd kind of like to see the accompanying policy while I'm considering the bylaw. So to go through them at a similar time. I think the two go hand in hand quite closely, and to consider one without the other, it just seems like it's incomplete. So I'd like to make a motion to defer this until the policy has been brought forward.
Is there a seconder? Seconded? Thank you. No discussion? All those in favor of deferring? All those opposed? Councillor Lamb, how are you voting? In favor of which? Deferring? Deferring, okay. So this is deferred to the next meeting. Thank you.
Once the policy is brought forward.
Yeah, but the policy's coming forward at the next meeting, we heard, the committee of the whole. Yes, so this would come back to the next council meeting. Thank you, okay. So we'll move on to the next bylaw. Thank you, Mr. Curry. Item 8.2A, District of Sechelt Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. And first motion to, we've already received this, so this has already had first, second, and third reading, and it's been requested that we move forward to adoption. Mr. Douglas, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I've just provided a short report, which includes the adoption of the bylaw and authority to move the funds from an non-statutory reserve to this statutory reserve once it's approved.
Thank you. Any questions by council? Councilor McLean.
Yeah, I'm comfortable moving forward with this one. I think it's we already have the reserve for this one. We've been practicing it. It's just putting the practice into writing. So I'm in favor of adopting this today.
Any other comments, questions? So we have two recommendations in front of us. Councillor Toth.
I will move recommendation 2 that council proceed with adoption of the District of Sechelt Affordable Housing Reserve Fund Bylaw number 586, 2019, and recommendation 3 that council authorize transferring $63,750.03 plus any interest accumulated from the Affordable Housing Reserve account into the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? We got a couple, lots of seconders. All those in favor? Thank you. So let's move to the bylaw. So this is on page 38, District of Sechelt Bylaw number 586, 2019, a bylaw to establish an affordable housing reserve fund for the District of Sechelt. And I'd look for someone to move adoption. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Douglas and Mr. Curry for bringing this forward. So we move on to item 10.1. This is a notice of motion brought forward from October 2nd, 2019 regular council meeting, and this is a motion from Councillor Toth. Would you like to speak to this, read it? Do what you will.
I guess I can read it again. I wish I hadn't made it so long now. Whereas the food bank services of the Sunshine Coast have witnessed a 30% increase in participating households since 2018, representing over 1,400 individuals of all ages in the Sechelt community alone, including single-parent households, children, and seniors. And whereas the food bank has recently completed its annual drive to raise 12,000 pounds of food to support the members of our community, and successfully raised 15,000 pounds, exceeding its goal, therefore be it resolved that the District of Sechelt Council make a contribution to the food bank services on the Sunshine Coast in the amount of $10 per employee and member of council to be funded from the council budget, and be it further resolved that the Mayor of the District of Sechelt issue a challenge to the Town of Gibson's Sunshine Coast Regional District and School District 46 to meet or exceed our contribution to the Sunshine Coast food banks as we start to enter the holiday season.
And you're making that motion?
I will make that motion.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Okay. I've actually talked to the other, I haven't talked to the school district yet, but I have talked to the mayor of the town of Gibson's and the chair of the regional district, just to warn them that it's coming. So I'm looking forward to issuing the challenge. Thank you for bringing this forward. Any comments? Councillor McLean.
I'm going to start with a couple questions. So first of all, what organization is this funding going to? There's 4 food banks on the Sunshine Coast, so there's not an organization listed. Secondly, how is this organization funded? I don't have that in front of me. I honestly don't know. And thirdly, where specifically is this money going towards? What is it going to buy?
Councillor Toth.
I'm going to answer the third one first. We don't get into the operations of nonprofit organizations. What food items they purchase is up to them. When I wrote this initially, I had been thinking Sunshine Coast Community Services because I was under the impression that they were the umbrella organization for all of the food banks on the Sunshine Coast. I learned it sort of just before I submitted this that was not the case. How we want to divvy that up, we can discuss that. If we want our contribution to go to the Sunshine Coast Food Bank, which is run by Community Services, we can do that. I didn't want to commit the town of Gibsons to contributing to the food bank located in Seashelt. So leave that open. And one more question, which I totally forgot.
How is the organization funded?
Which one?
The one that we're giving the money to.
My understanding is they all are charitable organizations. So it's by donation. That's the 3 of them. I don't know which the 4th one is that you're referring to. I know 3 of them, and they are all charitable, and because they are on the list of another organization I belong to that gives to charities.
So just going south-north is Salvation Army, St. Bart's, Sunshine Coast Community Services, and the Pender Harbor Community Church. Yeah. That's the 4. So on to my next point. There's no accountability for this funding. This isn't a donation. We are a government, and this is taxpayers' money. So what we're doing is funding this organization. So to make a decision where we don't have all the information, I don't know if they need this. We have a process for funding organizations in the community. We have 2, actually. One is a community investment program. One is our standing grant program. Both of those programs fund a wide variety of organizations in the community. So nothing against the food bank, but we have a process. And to be fair, we should make a request like this through the community investment program, which would be the most appropriate route for that. And that program has several accountability measures, such as providing financial reports, such as telling us where the money is going. We don't get into the operations of not-for-profits. We absolutely do. They tell us what they want the money for. No one has told us what the food bank wants this money for. Do they even need the money? You said in your motion that they have raised a lot of food. That's great. Is there a dire need right now? I don't know. If there is, I welcome the food bank to make that and approach us. I'm willing to help out, but I don't see that right now. I don't see anything behind this. And in order to fund this with taxpayers' money, I'm not willing to do it today.
All right. Any other comments, questions? I have to say that I know several people who work at the food bank, including the supervisor at the food bank, and there's always a dire need. They fund the money or the goods that they have collected through their annual drive won't last them more than a few months, if that. And they're always very appreciative of any money that comes forward because that allows them to do bulk buying and makes the dollars that they do get go further. So I understand where you're coming from, and inside of the processes that we have here, I think this is a novel idea that raises the profile of the food bank on the Sunshine Coast. I did as well mention to the mayor and the chair, that we would most likely, given we're in Seashelt here, would most likely give our funds to this food bank. and they would then look at funding the others up and down the coast. So I'm willing to support this. I think it's a great, I mean, there are people in our community, we recognize that there are people in our community who come to rely on the food that they get here. It makes their lives a little easier. Anybody else? No comment? Councillor Toth.
Yeah, like you say, the food will last, you know, whatever it lasts. The cash they can use when Christmas arrives, when Easter arrives, when it's harder for them to get donations. In the past, there has been the Elves Club food hampers that go out at Christmas time. That organization is no longer around doing food hampers. There's always a need for it. It doesn't necessarily wait for the intake for the community investment program.
Councillor Rowe.
Just from the Vital Signs report that was just published by the Community Foundation, the number of households registered at the Sunshine Coast Food Bank increased from 450 to 2,000 in 2009 to 770 in 2018. During the same time, the number of individuals attending each month increased from 900 to 1,200. As of July 2019, approximately 70 of the food bank's clients were women over 55. The cost of food per bag at the Sunshine Coast Food Bank has increased from $22 to $35.50. So I have no doubt they're always in need. I think I absolutely, I hear what you're saying, Matt, but I honestly don't see the harm in this, and I think it is a great way to support the food bank up and down the coast, because I think we can have some fun getting the other governments involved. My question would be, however, that do we have funds in our council account?
Yes.
Then I will be supporting this.
Yeah, I checked.
Okay.
Councillor Scott.
So I believe that this is a worthy cause, but I also recognize Councillor McLean's concerns in this. And maybe a pathway to make this a little bit more palatable. In the motion it states we issue a challenge to the other communities to meet or exceed our contribution. So then it's just a race as to who has the most employees. Possibly. So maybe we need to have a look at it and say, you know, as employees, as council, what's our contribution out of our own pocket, and have the town or district match up to $10 towards that contribution. And at least then there's some engagement of the staff and community spirit in that.
So can you, a little more clarity on what you're proposing?
Yeah, we can. So I'll propose to amend the motion that I seconded. Can I do that? I have no idea. So that we amend the motion. So how would we word this? Be it resolved, the District of Sechelt Council resolved to match staff and council contributions up to a maximum of $10. And that matching can be funded through the council budget.
Per employee.
Per employee.
And member of council.
Correct.
Okay. So then, okay, I get what you're saying. And what we'd have to look at then, because your other point was, given, I mean, the regional district has way more staff than we do. Are we looking at a percentage of staff? Because it's not going to be based on dollar amount, obviously.
Sure. I mean, at this point, we can issue it a challenge, and we just want them to jump on board. If they beat us by 3 times, so be it, and that's great.
Okay. Okay, so there's a proposal, an amendment to the motion. Is there a seconder for the amendment? And do we understand what the amendment is? Councillor Lamb is seconding it. Is everybody clear on what the amendment is? Okay. Counselor Scott.
Okay. So instead of this motion, which basically says that we will just fund $10, I'm going to throw in $20. And through our council budget, there's an additional $10 that's going to be added to that, to go to that contribution.
Counselor Rowe.
So personally, we're going to make a donation to the food bank
Yes,
and then match that out of our council budget
to a maximum of $10.
to a maximum of $10 per person. So all 72 employees, it'll be put out to them, make a donation and we'll match it. Love it. I get it.
Counselor McLean.
I'll happily provide $10 of my own money. I support the food bank. I am not providing that money from taxpayers' purse, so I am not going to support this amendment.
Thank you. Any other comments? One over here? Okay.
Sorry, just a little clarity. So if we have staff that don't donate, does that mean that no $10 comes out from the council side?
Exactly.
So is there a risk that they may get less money this way than the $10?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, or they could get more, right? If half of the staff and council contribute, they'll get the same amount as if we gave $10 per person, right? So it could be more. My question would be, how are we going to manage this? Who's going to keep track of who's donating?
I'm sure somebody in finance.
Is Mr. Curry still here?
He's hiding under the desk. You can manage that? Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Todd.
I think it's a great idea. I'll throw in extra money too. The reason I had originally proposed $10 per employee and member of council was to pick an easily scaled number. I didn't want to say $500 from the district of Sechelt and $500 from the town of Gibsons and then $500 from the regional district with its staff of 10 times what the district of Sechelt has. So that was why I picked the $10 per employee number. It's just a clarification.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, so does everybody understand what we're voting on? Yeah, amendment first? Everybody's okay with, okay, so we have an amendment that if whatever the staff member or the member of council puts in, up to $10 will be matched from the council budget. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? And would you like that recorded?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the amendment passes. So we have the motion as amended. All those in favor? Thank you. And opposed? And would you like that recorded?
Yes, please.
Thank you. All right. I guess I'll be issuing a letter. So item 10.2, EV charging stations. First motion to receive the report from the manager of financial services. Moved, and is there a seconder? Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. This is regarding the fast charge electric vehicle stations. Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. My report today recommends transferring the ownership, responsibility, and costs of the EV fast charging station from District of Sechelt to BC Hydro. So the EV fast charging station is located just on the Trail Bay property here across from the parking lot from the library in the building where we're sitting. We recommended in June, we brought forward a report that recommended to add fees to this charging station. And on the same day that we had planned to present the report, BC Hydro emailed and suggested that that they take over the responsibility, costs, and ownership of the charging station. So essentially they want to add another fast charging station, and they had approached us to see whether it was feasible on our side of the lot. Determined it wasn't. And in order to bring the second fast charging station, they wanted to take the ownership back And in addition, they're taking these fast charging stations across the province into their responsibility again, because some regulations on the program have changed, so where they can better manage the program when the ownership is in their hands, and same with the control. So the total cost of the total operating costs or direct costs of these charging stations to the district is approximately $3,000 a year. We don't have a fee to them, so that's an impact to taxes and taxpayers here. So my recommendation is that we transfer the ownership and responsibility back to BC Hydro to alleviate the burden on our taxpayers, and just step out of the agreement so we're not between a private landowner and BC Hydro any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor McLean.
Given that this charger is now approximately 5 years old, I assume it will need to be replaced at some point. No? Okay. I assume it'll need to be replaced at some time. Is there any way for us to ensure that BC Hydro will replace it when that time comes?
If we step back from the agreement, I don't think we have any way to ensure that, but I believe this particular one has received some upgrades. I think within 2018, it received some significant upgrades. So I don't think there would be an issue. And with the second one coming, I don't believe there's any plans to remove one or the new one coming. There'll be two eventually. So I don't see that as being a risk at this time.
It was interesting when this came forward the last time. I had just attended the Downtown Business Association meeting, and one of the directors had indicated that he had heard that BC Hydro was putting in 2 fast charging stations up and down the coast and throughout other communities, and was wondering how we got on board with that. And then we came to the meeting and got that information. So I actually went back and told him after that, yeah, they've approached us to do that. So he's pretty happy that that's going forward. Councillor Toth.
I've heard from a number of EV tourists on the Sunshine Coast, actually, and I know if we terminate this agreement, we're going to have no authority over it with Hydro. But just as a thing that might be worth mentioning in your conversations with Hydro, because you've got that communications channel, a lot of people who are tourists take selfies with their charger, with the car and the charger and things like that. And almost none of the electric charging stations are labeled with the community that they're in. So you've got no idea where these photos are taken, these selfies. And so it could be a good opportunity if Hydro were to incorporate just some basic signage, welcome to Sechelt. It could be a little bit of a tourism boost.
Yeah, we can make that suggestion for sure.
Okay, any other questions, comments? There's a recommendation. Would someone like to make recommendation number 2? Councillor Rowe.
I will move recommendation number 2, that staff terminate the EV charging station lease with BC Hydro and the software services and subscription agreement with Zero Systems, Inc., resulting in transfer of ownership of the fast charge EV station.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Curry.
Thank you.
So item 10.3, modification to Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living Community Garden Agreement. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And who's speaking to this? Mr. Yates.
I can try to on behalf of the corporate officer. It's a fairly straightforward situation. We've had a community garden here on Ocean Avenue for some time now. When it was originally started up, it was a joint effort between the Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living and the One Strawsa Society. Over time, the Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living has had less and less to do with the project, and One Straw has taken it over and covers their own liability insurance, which they submit to the district annually. So at this time, the Community Association would like to step out and leave the project solely in the hands of One Straw Society. So this allows Mayor and the corporate officer to sign the new lease or license of occupation with the One Straw Society.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Counselor Toth.
Since the corporate officer isn't here to answer the question, I don't imagine that the One Straw Society is going anywhere, but what happens were they to fold? When it was under two organizations, if one disappeared, I assume the other would have taken over.
Not necessarily, because you had the parent organization in the original time. The license of occupation would just cease to exist, and we'd end up cleaning it up or trying to find somebody else to operate it.
That was the key there. We'd end up cleaning it up. Thank you.
So would someone like to make the recommendation as presented? Counselor Toth. So that the request for assignment of the Ocean Vegetables Community Garden License Agreement from Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living to One Straw Society be granted, and the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the required assignment agreement. Is there a seconder? Seconded? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. Oh, I just wrote on myself. All right. Item 10.4. Habitat for Humanity strata title conversion. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Allen, are you speaking to this one? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is ongoing development at the Habitat for Humanity site in Wilson Creek. And we have here a request for endorsement respecting buildings with phases 5 and 6 of the strata plan to convert the occupied dwellings into strata units themselves. And this is pursuant to Section 242 of the Strata Property Act, which will allow for essentially the conversion of these units within duplexes to become independently owned strata units. And one key component of the Strata Property Act is that under this consideration, a council and approving officer is meant to consider the impacts on rental models or rental availability, pardon me, I should say. However, given that this is a part of the Habitat for Humanity model of affordable and attainable ownership, it was expected that these would be converted into ownerships. And this is phase 5 and 6, and earlier phases have already been converted, and therefore staff do support this proposal. And should we receive council endorsement, then the approving officer will be able to endorse the conversion plans. Thank you.
Any questions? I remember when this came forward before. They build the units, they retain ownership, they sell them, but then they have to actually go through this process to be able to transfer the title to the people who've actually purchased them. Yeah. Okay. No questions? Would someone like to make recommendation number 2? Councillor McLean. That in accordance with Section 242 of the Strata Property Act, that Phase 5 and Phase 6 of Strata Plan BCS 4293 be approved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Allen. 10.5. First, a motion to receive the report. And this is with regards to Sunshine Coast Regional District Board appointments. Someone to move receipt? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Are you speaking to this or am I speaking to this?
Again, on behalf of the corporate officer, a fairly simple report. The regional district requires a certified resolution of council in changing its directors and alternate directors, which council decided they wanted to do a little while ago, and this is the recommendations and the resolutions to do so.
Thank you. So basically what is happening is Councillor Lamb is stepping down from the regional district. Councillor Toth is taking over as director with Councillor McLean and Councillor Rowe as alternates at the regional district. And you'll notice it is effective November 1st. At the regional district each year, at the beginning of November, they re-elect the chair and vice chair and reset up the appointments for the chairs of the various committees. So we're making this effective November 1st so that when the changeover happens, the new directors will be in place for those appointments. So would someone like to make recommendations 2 and 3? Councillor Lamb. There's a seconder. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. You're not excited at all, are you? Item 10.6. This is BC Ambulance staff member request to waive rental fees of Seaside. So first, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. And the community services coordinator is not here, so I can speak to this. I actually met with the ambulance service manager and the two of the ambulance staff here in Seashelt. They regularly rent Seaside Center. They rent it about, they said about 12 times a year, and they rent that when they are doing workshops for their own staff. What they have done here is they have arranged for a workshop for all of the emergency ambulance staff up and down the coast to come together and get some training around PTSD that they're dealing with. And the doctor who's coming to do the workshop for them is also donating their time, so they're not getting paid at all. What they indicated when they came to me and we met was that typically first responders find it even more difficult in a small community when they're dealing with any kinds of situations. They said because you could work with somebody and save somebody's life one night and the next day run into them at the grocery store, because it's a very small community. So not only, they don't have the opportunity as they do in a bigger community to maybe shop in a different area and not necessarily come across these people again. They said they're confronted over and over and over a lot of times with the situation that they had to deal with. And so this is a workshop that they're putting on for the ambulance staff, again, up and down the coast, to help them in dealing with this. So they've come and requested, this is not part of their usual training. They've requested that we waive the $100 fee for the Seaside Center for the one-day ambulance service workshop. So it's up for council to determine whether or not we would like to do this. Currently, we do not have a policy in place. Staff are working on a policy that they will be bringing forward to us, which will help guide these kinds of requests. It's not in place currently, as I said, but will be coming forward in the next while. So any questions or comments? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, normally I'd like making a decision based on policy, but we don't have it yet, and I don't think we particularly need it for this specific instant. There's a need for this support. I think BC Ambulance staff are greatly overburdened in this community, and this is one thing we can do to help with that. So I'm willing to support this.
So would you make the recommendation number 2?
Yes, I will make recommendation 2 that the rental fees for Seaside Center be waived for the November 6, 2019 ambulance service workshop in the amount of $100.
Is there a seconder? Seconder, any comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. So next on our agenda is council reports. So over to you, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing going on right now is the federal election. I've been fortunate enough to speak with every election candidate in our riding, and I gotta say, they're all really great people who I think can all do good for our community. I obviously have a preference, but I'm gonna keep that to myself for now. But I just want to thank them all for the work that they're doing to represent our community to the world, really. I think I helped out with the Roberts Creek All Candidates Forum hosted by Voice Lab, which was a great event. It really got young people's issues out in front of them. So that was a really cool event. Other stuff I did, I attended an Arrowhead open house last Thursday. it's great to see the sense of community that that place brings to a lot of really disadvantaged people. It's a place where they can be together and support each other. So that's really cool to see. I think, let's stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they wanted an update on what was going on here in council, so I gave them everything I could. And then I attended the Airport Advisory Committee meeting, and my little blurb from the SCRD this time is just about building permits. And at the SCRD, they're running about 50% of what they did last year, and development permits are substantially less than 50%. So we're definitely in changing times. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
Okay, Brenda and I attended the Chamber all candidates meeting last week. I got to listen to all of them, and it was actually rather entertaining. Go Rhino Party, yes. What else? We all attended Community Association last night, and it was good to listen to their feedback and get some updates and hopefully give some answers to them. And other than that, personally, I've been doing a lot of grad fundraising for Chatlet Grads 2020, so that's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Well, I've been on the road most weekends watching my son play hockey in Princeton. But other than that, Janice and I did go to the All Candidates Forum, Girls' Night Out. And I mean, the Rhino Party fellow, Jeffrey, really, it's the first time I've been at an All Candidates Forum with so much laughter. And of course, we're all reflecting on a year ago when we were sitting up there terrified. So it was great to be sitting on the other side. But I really was, there was 7 candidates, I think. And, it's always inspiring, which I told Jeffrey, to see people run, even if they're just running on their own ideas, that they're that passionate. I love that. So that was good. Went to the Homelessness Advisory Committee Tuesday morning. And that's always interesting. We're going to be working on some granting opportunities to do some work around homelessness and poverty reduction. And I will be attending the Gibson's public hearing tomorrow night on their supportive housing projects. It's at 6 o'clock at the Legion, if anyone's interested in joining me. And that's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Don't have a whole lot to report. I tried to attend an APC meeting last week that had to be canceled because they didn't have quorum, so hopefully they've got a new one coming soon. Attended the SDBA board meeting this morning where they talked about Oktoberfest and the Festival of Lights coming up. They've got 2 events coming that are going to be quite interesting, and unfortunately I didn't write down the times for them, but hopefully Mayor Seegers has that information. One is a downtown safety forum. That's going to be on November 19th, I believe, for business owners downtown to come out and speak to Rain City and RCMP and the CAT team and mental health about concerns in the downtown and ways to help rather than just be problems in our community. The other one coming up that the SDBA is taking a leadership role in is the Tackling Plastics Forum, which is going to be on November 8th. And that's going to be about how to reduce the amount of single-use plastics we have in our life, regardless of whether we get there with legislation or not. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott.
I've been busy with committees. They take up a lot of time. The Airport Development Committee was last week, and it's a very passionate group. And they've got a lots of great ideas, and looking forward to keep going with that and moving it forward. Last night, again, with the community associations. Tonight, right before council, I attended the 858 Air Cadet Squadron event. They had the swearing in of a new officer tonight, which happens to be my wife. And great group. I will plug them again. They've got 16 new kids this year, so total strength up to 43. And so in 5 years, when we first started, there was under 10. And so it's a growing group, and it's a testament to the program and the parents who are on the officer side and the parent sponsoring committee side to make a great program. So I encourage anybody with kids between 12 and 18 to check into it. And that's it for me.
Harbor tomorrow.
Oh yes, and Harbor Committee tomorrow for Pam, who wants to come. Here. It's here.
Okay, and my report. A couple of things in the regional district. The SCRD directors met with the directors from Cathet Regional District. It's the first time that the two regional districts have actually come together as a group to meet and talk about common issues like transportation, ferries, etc. So it was, we held it on the Sunshine Coast here, hosted by the SCRD. And the next one will be with Cathet and potentially increase. So we have intergovernmental meetings here on the southern Sunshine Coast, but we have never reached out to those on the upper Sunshine Coast. So we're looking at forging some of those relationships. The Friday on the 4th, we actually had an SCRD staff barbecue. So the directors put on a barbecue for the staff. And some of the staff members who came, who've been there a long time, have said this has never happened at the regional district. So we had a great turnout. It was a lot of fun. Buy more cheese. We ran out of cheese, yes. The Sechelt Arts Festival has been on the last week or so here. I got to open the event and then also opened a couple of the premier events. The dance event was phenomenal. There were 2 events on Saturday the 5th, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. A couple of dancers who came over here from Vancouver, but most of it was local dancers through our dance academies here. Really well done. Attended 2 celebrations of life, one for Elsie Inkster, longtime resident of the community, passed away. Her celebration of life was on the 6th. It was at the Legion. It was a full house. People came from all over the place. Former staff members, etc., came and just to speak on, her impact in their lives. I attended one of the all candidates meetings. The other celebration of life I attended was for Kathleen Henderson. That's John Henderson, former mayor's mother. She passed away. That one was this past weekend. What else have I got in here? I think that's about it. We have one more event coming up this coming weekend. It is it's a Brazilian fusion music and dance event at the Sechelt Nation Community Hall on Saturday night. That's the 19th. One of our former counselors is going to be there dancing with his wife. So looks like it's going to be a fun project. I sort of mentioned the community association. We met with them last night. Lynn, you were asking when staff are going to be meeting, and we had our budget meeting today, and it'll be in November that you'll be contacted for meetings with the community associations by staff, and senior staff will be there. I think that's it. Art crawl this weekend too, that's right. Art crawl this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 10 till 5. Some of them will be open Friday night, but no, there's more than that. There's a ton of places anyway. Okay, so that's council reports, SCRD board report. Tomorrow there's an update on some more water information at the infrastructure meeting, so if you're interested, check that out. Council correspondence. Back into my agenda. So we have 2 letters in here. One is, first of all, let's do a motion to receive the correspondence. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And the first one is, was received at UBCM. And who received that?
Matt and me.
They went to one of the meetings that was with Minister Robinson, right? Yeah. And came back to me and said, we got a check. So they got a check for $10,000 for a water conservation action plan. This is one of them that we'd applied for. This will be actioned by the Water Resource Committee. So we're looking forward to how that moves forward. And the next one is about the foster month, which we've already addressed. So we have RCMP stats for July and August. Motion to receive, July, August, September, sorry. Motion to receive. Moved and seconded. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. Any comments? There will be a policing meeting tomorrow at the Regional District in the afternoon. And one of these, either the staff sergeant or one of her delegates will be there. So we'll move on to Mayor, Council, and staff emergency items. And we actually have a staff emergency item that has been brought forward, and copies were placed in the back there. The subject of this is emergency boiler replacement for RCMP Justice Services Building. So first, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And who is going to speak to this? Mr. Kootenay.
Yes, we have two boilers at the RCMP facility. Both of them are needed to heat the facility, and both of them are failing miserably. We actually have taken parts out of one to make the other one work, and it's just barely keeping up. It was about 10 degrees in the building yesterday and cooler in the cells. So we're looking, again, the parts are obsolete. We actually went to the supplier in Germany, and they don't make the parts anymore. So we need to replace these boilers very quickly to make sure there's heat in the facility. So we're looking at about $60,000. I think that's a bit high. Hopefully I can come a little under budget. We're looking at about $50,000 to purchase the boilers, but then there's going to be some programming of the units to get them in place to compensate with the electronics that go in there. So I'm looking for $60,000 to purchase, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Douglas to talk about financing options.
The funding source for this is the Public Safety Reserve, which currently holds $869,000. We have three things being funded from that in the current 2019 year. Marine Way retaining wall, RCMP roof, and RCMP reception area upgrade, which totals about $368,000. So after that's been removed from the balance in the reserve, we'd have $501,000 remaining, which is sufficient for the $60,000. Just further to this, we knew this was coming. We were hoping that we would be able to put this off till next year, and it was an item that was going to be coming forward for next year, and the funding source would be no different. We're just having to advance this project, that's all.
You're not going to just give them blankets and heavier coats?
That'd be cheaper.
All right. Councillor Toth.
It's unfortunate that we're, it is an emergency item. Absolutely, we can't delay it. Totally in favor of that. It's unfortunate that we didn't know about it in time to be able to consider energy efficiency grants that may have covered part of the cost of it or different equipment. So I would like to move recommendation 2, that $60,000 be allocated from the Public Safety Reserve for the supply and installation of the replacement of 2 boilers located at the RCMP/Justice Services Building.
And is there a seconder? Seconded. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Any other items? Motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you.